Over 2,000 Reddit communities are planning to go dark for 48 hours on June 12th.
Reddit is just the worst. Can we talk about Reddit and how much it sucks?
It's 2023 and Reddit is suddenly at war with itself. Subreddits are going dark, moderators are shutting down entire communities, and for the first time in history, Reddit feels unstable. But this moment didn't come out of nowhere. It was the result of 18 years of a website growing faster than anyone could control. Because the thing about being on top of the world is, there's only one direction left to go. Reddit was never engineered to handle millions of communities and billions of posts. From the outside, Reddit looks simple, maybe even minimal. But behind the curtain, it's one of the most over-engineered systems on the entire internet. To understand what Reddit would eventually become, we have to go back to 2005, before the protests, before the redesigns, before Reddit was a cultural force. Back to two college roommates who had no idea they were about to unleash something they could barely control. Steve and Alexis had just gotten rejected. Their food delivery startup idea was shot down instantly. But Paul Graham, the founder of Y Combinator, saw something in them. He told them to forget the idea and build this instead: the front page of the internet. They had no master plan, no infrastructure, no real strategy. What they had was a blank page, a weekend, and just enough stubbornness to keep going. So they launched Reddit, just this tiny empty website that no one visited. And the most interesting part, Reddit never advertises. They filled it with fake users. Yes, fake users. Dozens of accounts arguing with each other, upvoting each other, pretending to be a community that didn't exist yet. It was an illusion, but it worked. Real people started showing up, real posts, real conversations, real chaos. Suddenly, Reddit was alive, long before it was ready to be. Reddit wasn't supposed to win, at least not in the beginning. For years, the internet already had its chosen champion, Digg, the giant of early social news. Reddit was just a weird little brother hiding in the corner, running on broken code and prayers. But in 2010, something happened that nobody saw coming. Digg rolled out a massive redesign. And it became a disaster. Users hated it, and overnight, millions of them stampeded toward Reddit like a digital gold rush. But here's the problem. Reddit wasn't ready for any of this. The site was still running on duct-taped infrastructure, written by two founders who never planned for millions. Servers buckled, traffic spiked, every new user exposed another flaw in the system. And then came the real twist. Each subreddit behaved like its own miniature universe. They created their own culture, their own rules, and its own moderation team with its own demands. Reddit wasn't one website anymore. It was thousands, all stacked on top of a foundation built for 10 people in an apartment. They didn't scale, it mutated. And at this point, engineers were about to face a monster they didn't know how to control. By the early 2000s, Reddit had become huge. Bigger than anyone expected, but its codebase hadn't changed much since the days of fake users and weekend hacks. And this is where Reddit's real problem began. Every website has legacy code, but Reddit had legacy everything. Ancient scripts stitched together by dozens of engineers over a decade, each solving a problem for their moment, never imagining what would come next. Reddit's backend became a maze where no one knew where tunnels led. Some features weren't documented. Some functions were untouched for years because no one wanted to be the person who broke them. Engineers joke that Reddit wasn't a website. It was an archaeological site. If you change one line of code, 5 unrelated things might break: a voting bug, a moderation glitch, a styling meltdown. A random outage in a subreddit with 12 million members. Everything depended on everything. Nothing depended on nothing. And while users saw a calm, familiar, old-school website, internally, Reddit was a storm. Moderators kept asking for better tools. Users kept demanding new features. Advertisers wanted better tracking. And the system underneath was screaming for relief. Reddit's engineers were trapped in a loop. Patch the thing that breaks the thing that patches the thing. A breaking point was coming, and Reddit was about to attempt the most dangerous move any large platform can make. By 2017, Reddit was running out of time. The site wasn't just outdated, it was collapsing under its own weight. Developers had been warning leadership for years. The old Reddit cannot survive the next decade. It was too fragile, too dependent on code written before smartphones existed. So Reddit made a decision that would change everything. A complete rebuild. A total redesign. New systems, new everything. Everyone remembered what happened when Digg tried a bold redesign. Reddit had inherited Digg's users once before. Would they follow into their grave? It was a fear no one wanted to say out loud. Inside the company, this felt like a last choice. Engineers compared it to trying to replace a skyscraper's foundation, while the building was still full of people. But outside the company, users saw something very different. The redesign launched, and instantly became one of the biggest cultural uprisings in Reddit's history. Millions hated it. They hated the colors, the layout, the buttons. They hated everything. Everything that wasn't the Reddit they grew up with. Some subreddits demanded permanent access to the old site. Reddit Classic, a relic running on borrowed time. But here's what no one outside the engineering team understood. The redesign wasn't some cosmetic choice. It was literal survival. The old site couldn't support new features. It was a museum piece pretending to be a platform. Reddit wasn't choosing between old look and new look. It was choosing between living or slowly dying. But the redesign was only the beginning of the real problems ahead. They were facing something far worse than just angry users. At this point, Reddit hoped the redesign would simplify everything. I mean, modern code, cleaner systems, a fresh start. That sounds like a solid foundation, right? But instead, things got more complicated. Every year, Reddit added another layer, another tool for moderators, another ranking system, another feature to keep up with the modern internet, and each feature plugged into a platform already packed with edge cases, exceptions, and rules written for a completely different era. Reddit wasn't one website anymore. It was millions of micro-behaviors happening simultaneously across thousands of communities, each expecting the site to work in its own unique way. A ban in one subreddit might require a different response in another. A rule change in one community could break a moderation flow somewhere else entirely. A tiny update in the voting system could ripple into user behavior patterns across the entire platform. The complexity became exponential. It was like a Jenga tower where every block is load-bearing. Pull anything out, change anything at all, and you might topple 5 unrelated systems. To users, Reddit still looked simple, plain white, same layout, same feed. But underneath was a machine stitched together by years of emergency fixes, half-finished experiments, abandoned features, and systems designed to solve problems that no longer existed. Reddit wasn't over-engineered because anyone planned it that way. It was over-engineered because the community kept growing faster than the codebase could understand. And the moment was coming when all of that complexity would hit its breaking point. By 2023, Reddit was reaching a point it could no longer ignore. The platform's complexity wasn't just a technical burden anymore. Now it was becoming financial. For over a decade, Reddit had allowed third-party apps to access its data essentially for free. Apps built by a handful of developers, serving millions of users. But behind the scenes, these apps were hammering Reddit servers with billions of requests. Moderators relied on them, and entire communities were built on tools Reddit itself hadn't created. And here was the truth nobody wanted to hear. Reddit's infrastructure couldn't handle this forever, not without someone paying for it. So Reddit made a choice every engineer knew was inevitable, and every user feared. They raised the API prices dramatically. It was Reddit finally facing the cost of its own over-engineering, but to the community, it felt like betrayal. This was a breaking point. Subreddits went dark, mods staged walkouts, and millions of users protested. News outlets called it the biggest user uprising since Digg's collapse. For a moment, it looked like history was repeating itself. The company was fighting to keep the platform alive, but it also revealed something the users had never seen so clearly: just how fragile the entire system really was. In 2024, Reddit did something it had spent years preparing for. It went public. For most companies, an IPO is a celebration, similar to a victory lap. But for Reddit, it was actually something different. This was the exact moment the world finally got to look behind the curtain. Investors tore through the filings expecting a well-oiled machine. After all, Reddit looked simple to us users. Stable, predictable. But what they found instead actually shocked them. Reddit was expensive. And with expensive, I mean very, very expensive. Running the platform required massive, constant engineering effort, from fighting spam to supporting millions of moderators, to keeping ancient legacy systems alive just long enough to replace them. Every subreddit had its own rules, its own workflows, its own behaviors that Reddit had to support. No other social platform had this level of fragmentation or this level of overhead. And suddenly, the world saw the truth Reddit engineers had known for years. The site wasn't over-engineered because it wanted to be. It was over-engineered because the community demanded it. Reddit may have reached the public markets, but it arrived carrying 18 years of baggage no investor fully understood. And the biggest question still remains. After 18 years of chaos, protests, redesigns, outages, rewrites, uprisings, and endless complexity, Reddit stands at a crossroads. It is one of the biggest websites on Earth, one of the most influential, one of the most chaotic, and one of the most over-engineered platforms the internet has ever produced. But here's the twist. Reddit didn't become over-engineered because its founders wanted it that way. It became over-engineered because millions of unpredictable humans forced it to evolve in 1,000 different directions at once. Reddit is not a product anymore. It's an organism. Messy, reactive, emotional, and impossible to fully control. And now the question isn't whether Reddit can keep growing. It's whether Reddit can survive the weight of everything it has already become. Because if there's one thing history has shown, it's that even the biggest platforms can fall when their own complexity finally catches up. So now we're left with a final haunting question. Can Reddit outrun the chaos it was built on? Or will it become the next giant swallowed by its own engineering?